Thank you all for coming. Today is an important day in our country every year in which the President of the United States addresses the country and talks about the state of our precious union. I will tell you today that the state of our precious union is fractured. It's divided. And the President has the responsibility and gets the credit for making it that way. Since his campaign, President Trump has taken every opportunity in speeches, in tweets, in meetings to divide this country along racial lines. He's called Mexicans criminals and rapists. He's called white supremacists very fine people. He's called African American football players sons of bitches. He's called Haiti and Africa shithole countries. And speaking about the flow of black and brown immigrants to this country, he uses the term chain migration. And the list goes on and on and on. And what we know now, more than any time in our history, is that words matter. And President Trump's racist rhetoric makes the country less safe for people of color by encouraging and emboldening and pandering to those who wish to do harm to others based on the color of their skin. But words are not the only thing that matter. Actions matter also. And if you look at President Trump's actions and this administration's actions, they're just as divisive, they're just as discriminatory as President Trump's words. And the unfortunate part is when you talk about the actions of the presidency and administration, those effects go on for lifetimes. So if you look at President Trump right now and administration, you can see the effects that it's having already. He's sabotaging our healthcare system. He's sabotaging our public education system. He's sabotaging our criminal justice system. He's sabotaging our immigration system. And all of his efforts have a disproportionate impact on people of color. So I just want to make it crystal clear that for the Congressional Black Caucus, that prides itself on being the conscience of the Congress, and it's not a name that we just decided we'd start calling ourselves. It's a name that was earned, because this is a caucus that has always stared down and looked racism in the face, that fought it, and that supported our civil rights leaders. And many of the people that are in this caucus are the very people who sat at lunch counters when it was unpopular, the very people who marched when it was unpopular. And they did all of those things so that little kids like me could grow up and be anything that I wanted to be. They did that so Barack Obama could become president of the United States. They did that so we would have a more perfect union. And to now get to a point where we see someone actively doing so much to reverse all of the progress made by African Americans and people of color in this country, it's alarming. But before I turn it over to my next speaker, let me just say this. And I just talked about staring racism, bigotry, inequality, and injustice in the face. Many of our members will be there tonight, and that's exactly what they will do. The State of the Union is not a social function. It is part of our daily duties and responsibilities, and we will take that on in a very serious manner. But some of our members have decided to boycott, and I will make sure that before we leave that you all get an opportunity to hear from part of our caucus that will boycott. And we're doing it together. We're doing it in solidarity. Some will boycott, some will stare down racism. But we do it together. And let me just close my portion with this. I would hope tonight, with the entire world watching, that the president would use this speech not just to talk about unifying the country, not just to offer lofty words and project positive thoughts forward. Actions speak louder than words. If he wants to project tonight unity in this country, then he would apologize for calling African countries and Haiti shitholes. He would apologize for calling African American football players who take a knee to fight police misconduct and injustice in the criminal justice system, sons of bitches. But the most ironic part to me is that as the President of the United States, he can have a full-fledged attack on the FBI, our chief law enforcement in the country. He can battle them from the White House, and the country's silent. But when we stood up all of last year and the year before talking about police misconduct and community police relations, we were called unpatriotic. So at some point, like King said, silence becomes betrayal. And it's not the words of your friends, of your enemies that you remember, it's the silence of your friends. With that, let me call on Brenda Lawrence, who will talk about how today we will also be in solidarity with our sisters and women of the movement. So, Brenda.
I want to thank my chair, Cedric Richmond, for all of his leadership. I want you all to know that you will see us as women wearing black. And some of you may say, well, what are you doing? It looks like you're going to a funeral. And I can tell you it's time for us to bury some of the ugly truths that we have in this country. One of the reasons why we're wearing black, we're standing in solidarity as women. For women too long who have suffered in silence. Women for too long who have lived in fear and who use their power and said that we will not be victims. That's one of the reasons why you'll see Reese's button on all of us, and you'll hear more about that. So today we wear solidarity with the victims of sexual abuse and assault and gender inequality. It's time that we lay injustice for women, and I stand here proudly as a black woman, that we confront on a daily basis. When we talk about pay equality, at the bottom of that are black women. Black women who head households, black women who work hard every day and contributing members of our society, but we are at the bottom. We're saying that we're standing in a fight to say pay equality is important. It's time to end the violence and the silence about sexual assault and sexual abuse and harassment. We have often said, me too. We're saying time's up. But today, we're standing in solidarity with all the women that had the courage to come forward. And that's another reason why we're celebrating Reese. I serve as the vice chair of the Democratic Women's Working Group. And I will tell you, we, black women, white women, we will be sitting together in solidarity and saying that time is up for a president who has the audacity to be silent on issues of sexual assault, sexual abuse, and refuse to even address the own issues that he have against him and his behavior. And one of the things I want to hear from this president today is that I do apologize for every woman that I have put marginalized by saying it doesn't matter, I don't agree with what they're saying, calling us names like Pocahontas and diminishing the power and success that so many women have made in this country. Mr. President, turn the page today. Be a president. Apologize for your past, and let's move this country forward. Thank you.
Well, you heard Brenda mention Reese Taylor. So with that, let me just take myself out and just bring up Bonnie Watson Coleman, who will talk about Reese Taylor and why you see the red Reese pins.
So, last Congress, we created the Congressional Caucus on Black women and girls because that intersectionality of race and sex has been so profoundly left out of the discussions, the considerations, the dignity, the respect, and the policy and the laws. Reese Taylor is an example of that intersectionality. An innocent black woman walking home after church, being raped by 6 white men, living until the ripe age of 96, finding the ability and the strength that's just so prevalent among black women to be strong and have a rich life, but never, ever, ever receiving justice from this system. And so today, the women of the Black Caucus, and as you can see, the men of the Black Caucus and others who requested, have been given this opportunity to wear this simple red button that says RECE. And RECE stands for all of the women of color in particular whose issues have been marginalized, whose suffering has been ignored, and whose worth has been questioned. So today, she stands strong, and we stand strong with her in solidarity with women and in solidarity with women of color whose issues don't always receive the kind of attention, consideration, and justice that they deserve. So I want to thank my chairman for bringing us together. I want to thank my brothers and sisters in the Black Caucus for wearing this RECE button, and I will be grateful when I see my other colleagues in Congress proudly wear this button as well.
Thank you, Bonnie. And we'll also hear from Robin Kelly, who today, as her guest, has State Senator Kwame Raoul, who is from Haiti, who is a proud public servant in the Illinois State Senate. And she will talk about how we not only stand in solidarity with our RECE legacy and our legacy of women being marginalized and making sure that we recognize that that time is up, but also standing in solidarity with people from Africa and Haiti to let them know that this president's words did not speak for this Congress, the majority of the United States, and people of goodwill.
Good morning, and thank you all for being here. As always, I'd like to thank Chairman Richmond for his leadership of the CBC at this very critical time. I'd also like to thank my colleagues for their steadfast leadership and steel spines in the face of this administration and its tactics. I'd also like to thank my guest, Illinois State Senator Kwame Raoul, for being here today. As a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, I'd like to discuss the President's disgusting and uninformed comments about the Caribbean and African nations and many of our allies around the world. I'm not interested in the did he say or what did he mean by it conversation. It's clear from his policies what the President believes. Thanks to this president, his mouth, his tweeting fingers, our standing in the world has fallen to historic and record lows. His lack of diplomacy and, frankly, tact has undermined the diplomatic process. President Obama achieved around the world following an administration that thrust us in 2 wars. Make no mistake, President Trump's comments are a direct threat to our national security. We cannot keep American families safe without allies, and we cannot keep allies with this president spouting off on Twitter at 2 a.m. I'm proud to stand here with my colleagues in protest of this president's record, his comments, and his policies. I'm proud to have this outstanding first-generation Haitian-American Senator Raoul here. He is the perfect representation of First Lady Michelle Obama's guidance to go high when they go low. Senator Raoul represents a seat that President Obama once held, and he's been a champion in the General Assembly for all Illinois families. Whether you're a family that has been an American family for 100 years or one who just arrived, he represents the best of America's ongoing immigration legacy, one that has made our nation great. Thank you.
We're going to hear from Barbara Lee now, who is one of our members who is leading up the boycott side of what we're doing. We know that our women have to peel off for an event. We just want to let them know we will hold you down. You all have held our families down for centuries, so we think we can handle this if you all need to peel out. So with that, Barbara.
Thank you very much. I want to thank Chairman Richmond for bringing us together in a unified fashion to really talk about why we're doing what we're doing and why we must move forward and resist this Trump agenda, but also move forward with our agenda. Now, since 1998, I have attended every State of the Union. I have always believed that this event should be nonpartisan because I respect the office of the presidency. I will not attend this State of the Union because this president has not honored nor respected the office of the presidency and has shown total disregard for our democratic institutions. From relentless attacks on the press to outrageous statements that undermine the intelligence community and the Russia investigation and repeated threats to our judicial system, President Trump has launched an all-out assault on our democracy. And I did not make this decision lightly. President Trump's un-American approach to immigration, most recently calling Africa, El Salvador, and Haiti S-hole countries. It's racist, and it further demonstrates a lack of respect for the office of the presidency. His willingness to allow his chief of staff to lie about the good work of Congresswoman Frederica Wilson without requiring an apology reflects a total disregard for the truth. This is yet another example of this president undermining the dignity of the highest office of our land. According to the Washington Post, over the last year, President Trump has lied or misled the American people 2,000 times, sending a message to our children that lying is acceptable. Whether it's his response to Charlottesville, embracing the alt-right agenda, reviving the failed war on drugs, or ending the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program. President Trump has established over 50 blatantly racist policies. He's reduced the standard of living for communities of color and dishonored the office of the presidency like no other president in our history. This president has also supported policies that rip health care from 30 million Americans and give tax breaks to billionaires and corporations while forcing middle and low-income families to pay for it. He's led efforts to turn back the clock on women's rights and undermine civil and human rights. So history has shown us that democracy is fragile. It can only be maintained when engaged citizens and elected officials are willing to protect and preserve our sacred institutions. So while I respect the democratic system and the State of the Union tonight, I cannot in good faith attend. Instead of listening to President Trump, what I'm going to do, because I know he's going to manufacture his accomplishments and attack his political enemies and intentionally mislead the American people, I'm going to join some activists and our millennials and some young people and people who really want to strategize the next phase, not only of the resistance, but work toward ensuring that our vision is that to move America forward. And I thank the Congressional Black Caucus for really allowing this strategy to evolve as you are doing, Chairman Richmond, because I think our voices on all sides need to be heard by the American people. Thank you again.